Most B2B founders I know have the same blind spot. They've got years of customer data sitting in their CRM. They've got a HubSpot instance their team has been feeding since Series A, and they're still spending 80% of their growth budget chasing new logos, while the customers most likely to expand, refer, and stick around barely get a follow-up email. The math on this is brutal. Bain's research shows a 5% increase in customer retention can drive 25 to 95% profit growth, and yet customer marketing is almost always the last thing that gets funded. My guest today has spent the last decade inside one of the largest HubSpot agencies watching this pattern play out across hundreds of B2B companies. He's also the person who's figured out how to build AI agents that generated close to $1 million in efficiency gains for his own agency. Not by throwing money at a vendor, but by starting with a Slack message problem and a messy case study library. We're going to get into all of that, the hidden revenue in existing CRM, the real reason AI adoption stalls in most companies, and what actually moves the needle. The service launch mistakes that can kill momentum before you've even gone to market, and something I don't think anyone has asked him yet, why 60% of searches now end without a click, and what that actually means for B2B demand generation, and what companies with clean data do differently to show up in AI-generated answers. We're doing all of that with our guest, Paul Schmidt, VP of AI and Innovation at SmartBug Media. Let's go. Paul Schmidt has spent over a decade at SmartBug Media, the world's largest HubSpot agency partner and three-time HubSpot North American Partner of the Year. He's a certified HubSpot trainer who's personally overseen more than 200 implementations for companies ranging from Series A SaaS businesses to enterprise healthcare organizations. He's rebuilt SmartBug's entire service catalog from scratch. He's now leading the charge on AI for the agency, and he's recently built an AI research agent on top of HubSpot that the team estimates has driven close to $1 million in efficiency gain entirely from internal operations. He's also a percussionist and board member at the Littleton Symphony Orchestra in Colorado, which tells you a little something about how he thinks about frameworks and precision. Paul, welcome to the Predictable B2B Success podcast. Paul, your title has changed from VP of Marketing and Innovation to VP of AI and Innovation in 2025. Now, most title changes at the VP level are political. This one feels different, like something shifted in what the job actually is. What were you building when the company decided the title needed to change, and what does that transition signal about where HubSpot agencies are actually heading?
Yeah, it's a great question. In leading marketing teams, oftentimes your primary goal is building pipeline for your sales team. And you know what? Sorry, Vinay. I think there's something wrong with the recording. Is everything going okay with the recording?
I got a couple of error messages. It seems to be trying to capture whatever it missed, but other than that, should be okay.
I'm going to keep going. You can just edit that out.
Yep.
Good question, Vinay. I think one of when you're leading the marketing team for organization, oftentimes you're in charge of building pipeline, helping your sales team grow revenue. And so much of what we were doing, building campaigns, launching content, and doing that like standard marketing function, but really what we were seeing more and more of was this need for more agents and different internal tools that needed to be built. And what was happening is that some of these tools that were helping the marketing and sales team, but some of these tools that we were building, they really started to overlap into multiple parts of the business, into the delivery part of the business, into the finance and accounting part of the business. And when we think about it from like a traditional marketing sense, the way that I'm able to help the organization grow revenue now is from a broader scale perspective than just purely thinking about it from a marketing lens. And so this is really like a shift that we're seeing now. I feel like a lot of people's jobs have shifted from people that really just owned like one single area of functional area of a business and started like broadening. And I'm starting to see this like in roles shifting and really going in a broader direction now with AI. So that's really what we're seeing more of now. And it is part of my new role. It's like I still help and still have a revenue number that I need to help contribute and attribute towards. But where the levers that I need to pull really are going to go broader than launching the next new marketing campaign. They're going to go much broader past that. So that's really what we're seeing now. We're seeing that in organizations as well, as where leaders of teams, of marketing teams, are getting stretched to new areas, and some of these people are uncomfortable moving into these other areas. Yeah, it's been quite a transition now in moving into this more cross-departmental type of role.
We watched hundreds of HubSpot implementations from inside, some that drove real revenue, many that became expensive databases nobody trusted. What would you say is the single most reliable predictor early in an engagement that tells you which one it's going to be?
Yeah, sometimes most organizations understand the need for some place to store their customer information, but I think some of them really treat their CRM system and their initial implementation as just a one-off project, and it's something that you set up and hope that like your teams are all going to comply with how you store data and how you pull reporting and how you process actions within inside of it. And I think where we see the difference in terms of it going from being just this expensive database versus it being a tool that people run their businesses is the businesses that are successful with it, they have a plan in place to have ongoing maintenance and improvement, and they've got a wish list of how they want to continue to make it better after initial implementation. They also have, typically allocate some level of RevOps resources or CRM admin resources towards it. And if you don't have those two things, you don't have a plan, and if you don't put any resources towards it, then you end up having this database that just like grows with data, and data gets old over time and decays over time, and no one's providing a level of governance to it, and no one's providing a level of improvement to it. So over time, like, people eventually just lose trust in it. And I think that's the big point, is that if you want your team to use your CRM every day and really be able to extract value from it, like, they have to trust that the data inside of it is mostly accurate and that they're following the right process. Otherwise, you might have a few users, but other people are starting to use spreadsheets again, or they're spinning up new tools on their own, and that's typically what we see.
In terms of the behavior that you would notice early on in the piece, what is it that's related to trust that you pick up on?
Like as it relates to CRM adoption, or what do you mean?
Correct. As in the trust in their CRM and the willingness to invest in it and use it on an ongoing basis.
People need to be able to feel confident that when they're pulling a report that the data is accurate for the business. And I think where people lose trust in it, one is where they see like the same version of the same field 3 times or 5 times, and they're like, which version of this field do I use? Or they start to see breaks in processes, or they start to see leads slip through the cracks. They start to see this person reached out to us, it never got routed to anybody, or got routed to a person who doesn't work here any longer. And they start to see that there's like, it's starting to combust in certain areas within your automation. And people are like, this doesn't really seem to work very well. And that's really where they're like, let's go get another CRM. And that's where they think that just buying another system is going to be their opportunity to clean house and try it again. But if you have to think it's not just about buying a new tool. You really have to have a plan and investment in place if you want it to be an ongoing resource that you can use.
I'd like to dive a little bit further on what you just said. Is there a point at which a CRM becomes too broken to fix? And if so, what does a realistic migration actually require from a team that has no engineering resources?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that there definitely are CRM systems that are not getting the engineering and resource and investment at the company level, that are like, there's not any much innovation that's happening anymore, and they essentially become a little bit dated. And like, I think in terms of the point of no return, it happens when the CRM system itself is just, there's no new like features being implemented in the system. There's lower quality support. You can't get a support person on the phone, or you can't get in touch with anybody to help solve some of your challenges. And that's where I think of it like sort of like a point of no return, is where it's like there's the system itself is just probably needs to get sunset, or else it needs to be recharged. That's where I think about it. But there's, of the major like CRM players today, it's like we definitely encounter places where there's big data messes where we have to step into and help clean things up. And I think that there's always a place of where, if they want to continue using the same system, it just comes back to doing data auditing, understanding how they're using it as an organization, and then assessing, is it like, do we need a fresh account, or is there something where we can look at our standard objects and architecture inside of it and just clean things up and restart and reset. So I think that's how I think about it. But I know I think it's an easy thing, especially when a new leader comes on board, a new C-suite leader comes on board, and they may have a favorite CRM they want to use, and they're looking at the prospect of having to learn a new CRM that's a mess. They're just like, we're going to go to the new system, and this is going to be a chance for a refresh. And that's often what we see with a lot of clients that come on board with us, is like there's a leadership change, and it's like they want to move to a new system.
Bain's research shows a 5% increase in customer retention can drive 25 to 95% profit growth. Now, if the economics are that clear, what's the structural reason customer marketing keeps getting deprioritized? And what does it actually take to change that inside a B2B organization?
Yeah, marketing is always thought of as like an expense, P&L, and I think that marketing is one of the last types of investment that marketing departments typically invest in, from what we see from our clients. And I think it's a challenge, because oftentimes when companies that, especially if they're PE backed, when they're thinking about the goals that they have to hit, their board and their PE firm is like, we need net new logos, because that's really how we show growth to the market and how they can show growth in valuation over time. But I think that I think growth of net new logos and top line revenue, I think that's such a more compelling target to go after compared to churn and retention metrics. But when working with SaaS over the last decade plus, companies that are churning customers left and right they're struggling to keep good valuations within their organization. And that's really where I think that customer marketing and customer success really can be a tool to help keep customers happy, to make them successful, to highlight successful use cases of their product. And it's something that I feel like businesses are less likely to spend on, is just in customer marketing. So I think that's really one of the areas that, when you start to invest in just the small things, just like small onboarding gifts and small customer stories, things like that. Those are small little moves that doesn't take a full-time marketer to do. You could be a part of a marketing person's job could be to help own customer marketing. And by doing that, we really see our customers are able to help improve churn numbers. They're able to create these pieces of social proof that are compelling, and then ultimately help them in sales processes ongoing. So that's really what we're seeing on that side.
Again, I wonder if we could dive a little bit deeper. Could you give me a specific customer marketing motion, say for a Series B SaaS company, that they could use to launch in 30 days using the data they almost certainly have in their CRM? No new budget, no new headcount.
Yeah, one of the easiest ways, from a customer marketing perspective, is if you think about your net new customers that come on board, what are you doing to welcome them into your as a new customer? If we're thinking no budget, it has to be some sort of digital type of experience, but there's still a lot that can be done on that side. For example, one of the customer marketing initiatives that we ran was building out customer dashboards that were like an account-based landing page type of experience. But these customer dashboards, essentially what they do is it shows the client like who their team is, who they're working with, and what types of projects we're working on. But there's also areas to be able to provide value to them. Hey, here's some new workshops that we've done and that they're hosted on YouTube. We want to get these in front of you to help further educate you as a marketer or salesperson, and really highlighting the content that we've provided to them. And so, we're an agency or a consultancy. Companies pay us to provide advice and set up systems and things like that. But I think that there's so much content marketing that we've created that can be repurposed and provided to them that doesn't cost anything extra. It's just a sort of a reframing of how you think about those assets and the value they can provide.
So if I understand this correctly, you're essentially describing it to be as much of a data problem as it is a priority problem, which kind of leads me to the next question around AI work, because as I understand it, your thesis on AI at SmartBug seems to be that you have to get the data right before the agents can work. And the question I wanted to ask you is, most companies building AI agents right now are either building for real ROI or building to say they built something. And I wonder if you could walk me through the decision criteria you'd give any operator, not SmartBug specifically, to know which one they're actually doing.
Yeah, right now, what we're seeing with some of the frontier models and even some platform point-specific solution tools is that it's making it easier for almost anyone to be able to build agents or AI-powered tools or AI-powered workflows or custom GPTs, or you name it. There's lots of names for them. And there's like a tool sprawl that's happening in organizations right now. Everybody feels empowered that now they know that they don't have to be a coder to build something quite useful. And I think that's just a magical unlock of AI in general, is people realizing that. Yeah. But what it's creating essentially is there's people that are creating tools for their own use cases, and they may not be collectively sharing the value that they're getting from them with the rest of the organization, which then leads to duplicitous tools and people creating the same tool down the hall. And so you see a lot of like waste of tokens and of time being created for people that are creating something like a point solution for themselves. And it's a big trend that we're seeing right now, is like people spending a lot of tokens, creating a lot of different tools, and there's no sort of like organizational structure on how companies are like tagging them or creating a registry of all these tools so everybody can have access to all of them to use them in their own work. And so as we just think about like agents and do we go build this or do we hold off on that? We really think about the next 90 days, and if we were to build a tool, is there a direct tie to revenue or efficiency that can be gained in this, that we're going to be able to use this tool enough times to be able to gain that? How long is this tool going to take us to build? And so that's like what we're thinking about. Like, everybody has good ideas, but like how many of these good ideas are going to actually bring in a new customer or help make a customer experience better and longer? And that's how we're looking at it. We talk with a lot of companies that are like, I'm just going to go build that. And we talk about, let's think about, is that like the top priority agent or AI tool you should build today? Or are there other areas that are maybe less obvious that if we were to build that, it would free up a lot of time for your team to do other things? That's how we're thinking about it from an ROI perspective right now. Once companies are able to wrap their heads around all of the tools that their employees are building.
What does the data layer underneath a well-built agent actually need to look like? And what's the minimum viable version of that for a team that, say, doesn't have years of clean CRM history?
Yeah, you can start small with that. There's a number of like agent building types of functions. We're a big HubSpot shop, so we're always looking at opportunities for building agents on HubSpot. But even like you can start to think for organizations that like you said, don't have like tons of clean data, a big platform for it. You could start with other tools like ChatGPT and build custom agents where you essentially, like a custom GPT can work off of a CSV file. It can work off of a table of data. And so I think that so that's the most obvious type of platform. Same with Gemini and Gems. Similar with Claude and Skills. One other platform, like we started building agents on quite early that didn't immediately integrate with our HubSpot, was Agent AI, which is Dharmesh, the co-founder of HubSpot's own agent building platform. And we built a number of just like tools towards the very beginning that would allow us to prove out various sales and marketing functions that were used to like help build content or do some sales research or things like that. And so you can start as simple as that. And I think one of the first types of agents I always try to recommend building that almost any organization should have is like a research agent. And you could build out like a custom GPT or a gem that's a research agent, and every time a new lead comes in, you're able to run that company or that contact through that research agent, and it's able to give you a plethora of information, of background information on the company, the industry, and it just makes, like, when you go into that first sales meeting with a prospect, it just makes you look a little more informed versus asking these sort of 101 level types of questions. So that's my advice on just platform and getting started.
Okay. And I'm curious, what would you say are the 5 CRM fields that matter most for an AI agent to function well? And what are the 5 fields most companies track that are basically useless for prompting?
Yeah, a lot of CRM systems now, they're starting to embed like enrichment data inside of it. So it'll go in and update your company name and domain and company size and city and all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of that enrichment data is almost like table stakes at this point. And so I think what's most important that you need to establish as a marketing and sales team and a RevOps team are the fields that relate to lifecycle stage. And like lead status, so we know if we're creating lists of contacts or companies, are they our existing company? Are they existing customer today, or are they a lead today, or are they a company we used to work with and they're not a customer anymore today? And so I think that's probably one of the most impactful fields is segmentation around life cycle stage. So I think that's a big one right there. I think understanding what, if they have been a customer, what products have they purchased in the past? What did they originally come to you? What was the original problem that they came to you with? So you have all that type of information if there's subsequent opportunities to talk with them again. And then, yeah, it's tough to name more. I think it's so company specific what types of data you should be gathering, but you need to know who your customers are, who your prospects are, and what's the main problem that they came to you originally. Their problems are going to evolve over time as you continue to work with them. They may identify new problems, or they have other areas you can help them, but I think at least knowing originally how they came to you is an important field. And then in terms of other information that's extraneous or less necessary, every CRM comes standard with 100 properties, and I think that it's really business specific what you should be like maintaining and continuing to invest and put and enrich.
So my takeaway would be that the real priority should be ensuring that the fields that allow for continued sales motions are given the most importance, and the rest could rely on basic enrichment or a bit of a lesser priority.
Or analytics data too. I think that if you can put your analytics data inside your CRM, which inside of HubSpot it comes just standard like that, then you know, like, when's the last time these people were on our website? When's the last time they clicked an email? When's the first time they came to our database? So I think there's a number of date property fields that are useful as well, just so you understand that life cycle of the customer.
You've said publicly that not every agent you build makes it into production. Could you tell us about one that didn't? What did that failure tell you about how to evaluate whether an AI build is actually worth doing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've built a number of agents over time, and I'm like, it started out as a good idea, and you go down the path of building it, and you realize either AI isn't, like when ChatGPT first came out, AI, it was okay, it worked, but it would hallucinate a lot. And so when you start building that tool, you realize AI is not mature enough to be able to accomplish this in a single prompt, or it's going to take multiple systems feeding data from one to the other, or it's going to take too much human involvement to make it worth our time to build this. And one of the agents that we got pretty far down the path with was building like a pitch deck builder. And essentially the pitch deck builder, what it would do is if you have a sales call with a prospect, you could press a button and it would spin up a pitch deck. And so you can think about that, like that takes a lot of systems to incorporate a recorded conversation to a transcript to a summary of it to then feeding it into a pitch deck system to then feed that results into a predefined template and make sure that's all on brand at the same time. There's a lot of steps and systems in there. And really what we saw was that building something like that produced a result that would probably get us 80% of the way there. The pitch deck would be pretty good, but it needed some finessing. It needed a little bit of design work. And there was just like a little bit too much like human interaction that we wanted to have to include in there in order for it to make this like a great sort of hands-free type of system. And so that was one issue. The other issue was like security, because like when you're creating these types of tools, like you're like daisy chaining them together for some of them. You're going from a transcription system to a CRM to a pitch, maybe to a graphic creation tool. And it's like, where is all that data going? And so if you're working with some of the big players in the system, like they've got all sorts of security, data security embedded, and they say they don't train the data within their models. But at the end of the day, like we talk with a lot of like mid-sized large companies, and like they don't want their data just being shoved into all these different systems. Like that's not an ethical move to do. So that's one area where it's just like you have to be careful where you're putting all this data. And I think some people are too like willy-nilly and loose about how they're thinking about that. So I would say that's the second part. The third lesson I would have on this is that I think that like having access to building tools also gives us the opportunity to rethink about the format in which we deliver value at the end of the day. And so we were trying to build this pitch deck system that would allow us to automate the build out of a pitch deck. But do prospects really want a pitch deck? Or do they want some other kind of format to be able to understand how SmartBug can deliver value for them? And so at the end of the day, it's like we like shift gears and we're like, maybe that's not even the right format to begin with. And we started to go down more of the path towards interactive content, web pages, and account-based marketing types of pages. And we find that type of engaging experience where you have a web page build out or something interactive is just more compelling experience for our prospects compared to this old school PowerPoint deck. And so that was like the third lesson that along the way is just rethink about it in general. Don't use AI to just sprinkle onto your old processes. Use AI as an opportunity to really rethink about how you're delivering your product in general.
Is there a point in the build process where you know before you're finished that it's not going to make it?
Yeah, I usually get about 90% of the way done, and you get pretty far down the path because everybody within that specific build was like, we all realized we need something to put in front of our clients. But we got pretty far down the road and we realized there's data security issues, there's resourcing issues, now there's new technology out there that allows you to spin up content that's more beautiful and engaging than it is in these other deck type of format. And so we got pretty far down that path with that one before we knew it was time to switch gears. But I feel like depending on what you're building, it could come at different percentages within the build experience. And I think those are some of the lessons you'll learn, and you will end up wasting some amount of resources like building things that don't make it to market. But that's okay. I think it's part of the learning process, and it's something that you need to share with your team of things that you had tried in the past that you learned lessons so they don't try to do it again or try to promote that to their own client.
Brilliant. The framing of build what you can actually be sold and scaled. You applied that to AI agents, but you applied it to SmartBug services first. In fact, you rebuilt the entire catalog, the service catalog, that is, from the ground up as Director of Services Strategy. Walk me through how you decided what to kill, specifically the framework that you used to evaluate whether a service had real distribution path versus being something the team was just good at delivering.
Yeah, it's a good question. In our over the years as an agency, our team, we've always had, when we work with a client, we have a planning spreadsheet or a planning table that really shows the client, you've paid for 100 hours in a month of work, here's all the things that we're going to do for you in that month. And I'm just giving you a little background. I think it's important to know, but that kind of system is what most agencies provide to their client. Here's what we're going to be doing. And we saw that over time, if this is all built out in sheets or spreadsheets or Excel sheets, like how do we have visibility as an organization in terms of the actual work that we're doing? Who has the time to sift through 100 spreadsheets to see all the types of deliverables that we're doing for a client? And so this was like the genesis of like why we thought about how we need to rebuild this catalog into our own CRM system. So we understand what types of services that we can offer the client, and of those that we're offering, how many of those are we actually selling each month and quarter and year? And what are the categories of those deliverables that we're selling over time? And which of those categories of deliverables are gaining traction and which are losing traction over time? And we went through this sort of digitization process where we took this old format of spreadsheets and Excel data and really all put it into a custom system inside of our CRM. So now we can connect all of that data to our company contact data. And so in terms of killing services and which services we keep around, we could look into that data quickly and see here's the deliverables that we consistently do on a monthly and quarterly basis, never done. And the deliverables that we've never done, oftentimes they were things that people wanted to add to our services catalog and wanted to pitch, but no one really, maybe the documentation and the actual product itself wasn't that compelling or strong, or it was too expensive of a service, or clients just didn't really see the value in it. And so those are the services that we looked at, and instead of just killing them, we mark them as inactive, because it's useful to then go down in the future and see what services are inactive and that are dormant and that you won't be using. And so in terms of that framework, it really came down to the sales of them. Are we actually actively servicing this thing on an ongoing basis? And we could see that within a few months, which of those services are getting attention and which ones we never get touched. And that's really how we were able to clean things up. And going forward, we are constantly talking to our delivery folks and understanding what are the services that they're providing to their clients, and are there enough variations of those services that your clients are needing that will help drive them towards their new goals. And so it's an ongoing innovation process, which that's the other part of my role, is building new service offerings for our clients so that way we're able to support them as new innovation comes onto market.
What would you say has been the most embarrassing service that seemed obvious at the time but died faster than you expected, and what did it teach you about service market fit?
Yeah, one of the challenges in working in a services-based organization is that the quality of your services is only as good as the quality of the people and the quality of the process that you've built for that service line. And we've built services over the years where we heard a little bit of market rumbling around, and so we were quick to go jump on a service offer around it. But I think one of them we built several years ago was a managed like social offering to manage like corporate social media pages. And like this type of service offering, I think was quite useful when LinkedIn and Facebook started to allow company pages in there. But on an ongoing basis, like we started to see, wow, where consumers' attention is going to is the individual creators, not to company corporate brand pages. We could manage a corporate brand page, but that's not really where most of the juice is worth the squeeze. Most of the value and where companies are really going to get the value from is managing the individuals within the organization, like the CEO or the influencers within that organization. That's where the value is. And we built out this offering, and it didn't get a lot of traction, and it was something that we sunset pretty quickly as a result of it doesn't really provide a ton of value to the client doing that kind of thing. I will say, secondly, running a social media service also requires a different kind of skill set compared to running a PR service or like a design service or a more technical type of service. Managing social media is a different skill set altogether. And I think that if you try to go build a service offering for which you don't have people that are social media savvy, from writing it for individuals or writing it for other people, they're not, like, those individuals are not going to go sell that service because they're going to not feel confident delivering it. And your company, if your clients do buy it, they may get a subpar experience, and that's the worst thing you want to get, is delivering work that doesn't meet the client's expectation, which really harms relationships for the long term. And so those are some things that, just because you have a good idea for a service offering, you need to make sure that you have the right people in place to be able to deliver that kind of work. Otherwise, you're not setting your team up for that success in the long run. So it's not just about building new processes. You need the people and skills to do that kind of stuff.
A real distribution first thinking to drive the whole process. And that thinking connects directly to the AI adoption question, because you've said something that I think is more controversial than it sounds, which is real AI adoption starts with leaders, not the frontline team. Now, you've said the most expensive tool in enterprise marketing isn't your tech stack, it's your approval process. Could you give us a concrete example of what that actually costs a B2B company in real terms and how you've seen teams fix it?
I think that as it comes to AI adoption across an organization, which is a big part of what my role is, improving AI adoption and AI fluency, you're going to have, within every organization, you're going to have 20% of your team that's really early adopters. They're really excited about AI. They're building tools. And then you're going to have a good chunky middle part of that bell curve of people that use AI for writing emails and doing not heavily intensive AI tasks. And then you're going to have folks on the end of the bell curve that are like silently resisting using AI at all. And when you think about achieving greater AI adoption across the board, like you can't just leave it up to individual C-suite people to drive all of the adoption. You need people like advocates throughout the organization who are sharing stories of how they've become more efficient, how they've had more time to do other things because they've used AI to eliminate the mundane. So you need a bit of both. But if you only have people sprinkled the organization that are maybe sharing stories and advocating for AI, that's going to help pockets of the organization. You need both. You need people throughout the organization. You do need people at the top that are mandating organizational goals related to AI usage and to mandating that there needs to be a level of innovation across every single team, that they need to do this as part of a performance management. And so that's really what my stance has evolved to, is like you need your C-suite bought in and mandating this and using it themselves and setting a good example, inspiring their team. You also need individuals peppered throughout the organization that are sharing stories and use cases. In terms of approval processes and things like that, I don't have a lot of commentary on that, but I think it's just that like right now in the early days of AI, like we need to give people the liberty and some amount of time to be able to go experiment and learn with how AI functions. If you're expecting all of your team to adopt AI based on one person that's like generating all the processes, it's not going to be very effective. So that's a little commentary on philosophically how you think about AI adoption and fluency.
Okay, so it's not, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just a people problem. It could be a combination of a process, people, and org design issue.
It's we think about it as the 4 Ps. We think about it as like people, process, platform, and policy. Those are like the 4 Ps to think about. And with people that are really tech savvy, that are like early adopters, oftentimes they're maybe stronger within the platform side of things and maybe even the people side of things, but maybe their policy is a little weaker. And that's how we look at it as part of our auditing with clients. And if you can solve for all 4 of those, like you're gonna just upskill everything across the board AI wise.
You've said that real AI adoption starts with leaders modeling AI use daily. But there's a counter argument. Most leaders at Series B and C companies don't have the time to become AI power users. What's the minimum viable leadership behavior that you find actually moves the needle on team adoption?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're looking at leaders within organizations, like you're going to find folks some that are naturally early adopters and like using AI and they like using technology and they're excited about sharing types of use cases. And there's others that are like just want to keep things the old school way. And I think minimum viable or actions that leaders need to take is they need to be active within their whatever community in the organization is sharing stories and sharing use cases. For example, we have a Slack channel that's dedicated to sharing AI use cases across the board. And we really rely on our leaders to go in there at least monthly with a use case that they've done within their own jobs to show how they maybe bend or broke an existing process and tested how they used AI to become more efficient, effective, or creative to be able to accomplish that. And so that's a real expectation, is like when you think about like where your AI community and your organization resides, like measure how often your leaders are in there commenting and sharing their use cases. I think that really shows us that overall health of how well like your AI is going to flourish in your organization. And so I think that's something that like all leadership teams need to be thinking about, is like setting examples from the front and the top, and how like they're not just mandating AI usage, they're actually like using it in their day to day, and they're sharing those use cases. And lastly, I'll say is that I think showing with leaders sharing those types of stories within those very public channels in the organization, it shows people that are maybe like younger or lower in the organizational chart that it's okay to like to bend the process, to test these things out, to try new methods of completing our work for our client or our customer using AI. And I think that's one of the other challenges from a policy perspective, is that if you don't have clear policy in your organization, you're going to have the early adopters doing stuff out just on their own and not telling anybody, and then you're going to have a majority of people that just are not going to use AI very much because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble. And so like that's the big part about it, is like we want to alleviate people thinking they're going to get in trouble for testing AI on new process. That's the thing I think leaders can really help instill, that like it's a safe environment to test these things out.
Have you seen AI make approval bottlenecks worse by generating more options faster than a team can decide?
I think to some degree, I think I can continue to throw many options at you. I think AI's also gotten better at like giving you recommendations. Here's 3 options of directions you can go. Based on the background and what you're telling me, B is probably the best option, but C could be a viable option too. And so I think AI is actually getting better at this sort of analysis paralysis problem that we see in giving you options, but also pointing you at one of them.
Around 60% of searches now end without a click. People get their answer from an AI overview and never visit a site. For B2B demand gen, that's a significant shift in how buyers can find and evaluate vendors. What does a company with clean, well-structured CRM data do differently to show up in those AI-generated answers versus a company that doesn't?
Yeah. You know, I think this has become a big pain point for a lot of marketing teams, and their leadership is looking at them saying, hey, our traffic is falling 30-40% every year. What is going on? And I think we can only expect that organic search traffic to your website is going to continue to go down as search behavior really migrates towards the frontier models, and also just towards relying on getting the results right from within Google versus going to a web page. So I think really we can really only expect that for that to continue to accelerate. Where I think it's useful is there's a number of where marketers and demand gen teams need to be thinking about is like there's a number of new AEO tools or GEO tools that are coming out on market right now that are essentially like prompt tracking tools or keyword tracking tools, old school keyword tracking tools. And that's essentially what they are. But really where some of the tools that can be really valuable, that ones that are integrated with your CRM and your CMS, is that your CRM contains all your customer data. And what AI can do quite well is analyze trends and pull together where it sees areas of opportunity. And if your CRM identifies certain segments of the market that you should be going after, and that's integrated with your CMS tools and your AEO tools, then it can essentially say, here's the kinds of content that's most relevant to this segment of your database, which it has a growing opportunity. And those, I think, those like integrated AEO tools, I think, are where most of the value is. Those are the most valuable types of tools that organizations can be looking at now as it relates to search and getting found in search. Because if you just buy a point solution AEO tool, it's just a tracking tool. It'll tell you how well you rank for a certain type of prompt, but you really want to make sure that you're ranking for the prompts for which the most valuable segments of your database are looking for. And so that's how we think about it, is like you want those systems integrated in there. And then from there, like those AEO tools do tracking of prompts and everything like that, but they also tell you, your marketing demand gen teams, what's the exact content that you want to create. It's not just a new blog post or a new website page. It may be you need to go generate and be able to increase the volume of citations and reviews that you're getting on other websites. And so like, you really need those pieces all integrated to have that full story in what you should be building.
Oh, what's the fastest win you've seen from an answer engine optimization fix? The thing that moved a company from invisible to cited in AI answers?
The thing right now, and I think it's really an early mover advantage. I think everybody's going to be jumping on this early mover advantage, but all the frontier models are crawling the web at such a fast rate that you can get picked up quite quickly within frontier model results or within Google's instant answers. And so I think within 30 days, you could be tracking your prompts, getting content created and published. I think you can do it faster than 30 days. How much it's going to move the needle is kind of dependent on overall search volume. If you have a ton of search volume in your industry, then you might see a greater bump. But with higher search volume comes greater competition. That's just like the name of the game as it is in SEO or AEO. But it can come quite quick. But I think those that are jumping on it right now, we're already starting to see results, and people publish a piece of content and it's surfaced within days within results.
Certainly. SmartBug's own clients are starting to build their own AI agents at some point. Doesn't that erode the need for an agency? What's the defensible value of a HubSpot agency in 2027 if clients can configure most of it for themselves?
It's a good question, and I think a lot of services companies and I think a lot of technology companies are wrestling with this like build, buy, rent type of argument. And I think that what we're seeing with organizations is like you definitely have companies that have individuals that are early adopters inside of them that are building point solutions for their team, and they're useful and they're using them, and that may make it so that our ability to sell micro SaaS apps, like that business line erodes. But organizations still need some sort of, we think of it as a tour guide to them navigate the technology future of AI. And I think that's really where agencies are going to be moving towards, is that instead of just companies buying time with them, like that's how most agencies operate, is just time-based retainers. They move towards one where it's more outcome-based, where agencies are delivering a volume of leads or volume of attributed revenue or attributed savings and ROI. I think that's really where like that outcome-based retainer is going to happen. But I also think that there's like organizations that hire agencies, like they're not in the business of creating agents and creating micro SaaS apps and creating apps and supporting apps. They are in the business of manufacturing like products, or they're in the business of like building things for clients that have nothing to do with supporting those kinds of customer systems. And so there's going to be some segment, I think, especially within SaaS, they're going to have some teams that are helping, that are supporting that are building and supporting their own tools because they have that talent in house. But the large majority of the market is not going to have the skills or the resources equipped to support that. And I think that's where agencies are going to come in, and agencies are going to be they're going to help companies audit all of their AI tools and all of their tools. They're going to help manage their token usage. They're going to help maintain agents over time. Agents degrade over time. Like you have to keep agents updated over time. Otherwise, like the prompting best practices change, the models get deprecated. And I think like you always have to have somebody watching that. And so who's going to watch that? Is it going to be somebody internally, or do you want to hire an agency that has decades of experience or a lot more experience than you in doing that? And so I think there's always going to be room for service providers, but the way that they're like showing value in their contracts, I think we're going to see a lot of change in the coming years on that.
Is customer marketing actually the wrong move at Series A? And you're giving advice that only applies to Series C and beyond? Because most Series A founders are optimizing for new logo ARR, because that's what investors care about.
I don't think it's ever too early to invest in customer marketing. Like we talked about, customer marketing does not have to be a big expensive item on your P&L. It can be as simple as a gesture when it comes to onboarding, or when a customer has an anniversary. You could send them something small, a small token of your appreciation. If you have your data, good data of your customers inside of your CRM, you can easily run customer marketing campaigns to get them to identify the customers in your database that have a higher propensity to give you a 5-star review somewhere. That doesn't cost a lot of money to set up those sort of identifiers and even incentives to a degree. And then to create customer stories and things like that takes a little bit of marketing budget, but I don't think you need to wait to a certain series before you start customer marketing. I think if anything, I think social proof is like the thing you should be investing from almost from day one as a company, and figuring out how you can get word of mouth going and people talking about you on the review channels and sites where buyers are paying attention.
And finally, what's the question no one asks you? The thing you know about customer marketing or AI in service businesses that most people are completely missing?
That's a really good question. I think that's a good one. As I think about what are companies not asking about as it relates to AI, I think right now, I think that companies are trying to wrap their minds around how they can incorporate AI within their organization. And I think what they think about very quickly is about what tools and processes can we update first. And I think that what they're not thinking about even sooner is more the foundation of governance and safety in their organization, and what they want to think about with and being the owners of their customer data. I think that what they're not thinking about today is that they're really thinking about innovation and moving things forward and building new tools, and all that stuff is really exciting, but you can't build all that stuff at the expense of the customer data and prospect data that you've been trusted with, that you own, that you have an obligation towards. And so I think that what I don't hear enough people talking about in conversations that I'm getting into is how do I make sure that the types of data that we're going to be incorporating and including within these tools is safe, it is protected, is not going to get spit out into a free AI tool that if somebody does a search for my business, it's going to pull up a bunch of PII or protected information. It's really going to put us in legal jeopardy. And so I think that's the one big thing that they're not asking enough questions about, is the governance layer of AI and of tool building in general. But I think that as companies do start to get more mature about their AI usage, that's where they almost have to take a step back and say, what have we been doing? And some of them have to right those wrongs that they have done along the way to make sure in the future when they're building new technology and platforms that they're doing in a compliant, in a responsible and ethical way.
Paul, thank you. This has been very insightful. For those listening and who would like to know more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Paul Schmidt. You can just look Paul Schmidt, SmartBug. That's our agency. You can also go to SmartBug's own website. You can see the types of services that we help our clients with, and you can check all my recordings out on paulschmidt.com.
Okay, we'll include links to that in the show notes. Paul, thank you again.
Thanks, Vinay. Appreciate the time.